license that lets you get on a plane yet, so I've got that now. I don't plan on revisiting our fare bus system anytime soon. It's funny because I usually travel by train, and that's wonderful. I love Amtrak, but they don't Amtrak from Milwaukee to Nashville.
No, the closest you're going to get is Memphis.
Yeah. And so there was no way around just taking the bus, which I learned that where the bus station and the train station are the same building, like in Milwaukee, they're pretty nice. It's actually wonderful. Where it's just the bus station, it's like going to jail. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very bad.
I've been in a few myself.
Really bad. It's really bad. And so, yeah, do I regret it? Hell no. Had a great time. Awesome time. I'm flying in this year.
Okay. You're flying in this year. All right, cool.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we'll be glad to have you come and hang out with us again. For sure.
I wanted to ask you, out of all these mysteries, is there anything that they have in common that really draws you to certain ones, and what makes them interesting to you?
I like the one-offs a lot. I like the cryptids that don't fit a kind of standard procedure.
Mm-hmm.
The just absolutely weird ones, especially when they come from someone who has no interest in telling the story. In fact, would rather not tell the story because I don't want everybody to think I'm crazy. But that's sometimes I think the most credible ones, are things that people see, and there's often they don't get anything out of it,
right?
And but they saw something. I absolutely believe they saw something, and though that really draws me in. That, and where there's just these lingering, hanging questions that may never be answered, but I can't seem to let go of them. You guys have really spread out a lot and are covering a lot of stuff. I love the one you did on Shakespeare.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was that's kind of out of the norm for the paranormal, if you want to call it that, but it was really fascinating. And it's kind of that in search of ethos that we're going to look at everything. If I had to pick one that really sticks with me, the bones of giants that have been found in so many places. And I know I did an episode on this on my little podcast there.
Yep.
And this stuff is documented in the newspapers, and this really happened. And, they weren't impossible giant. They weren't 40 foot tall. They weren't something that couldn't exist physically, but they're sometimes 8 feet tall. Okay. Which is a very, very large man. They're sometimes, between 7 and 9 feet tall. And that happened. And there was a disgraceful casualness with which get these bones out of here so we can build the bank or whatever. But that happened. And it happened a lot in Wisconsin, but it happened really all over America. And I'm sure they haven't all been dug up. And I'd really like to know who are those people? They could be many things. And that draws me in and does not let go.
Yeah, it's definitely been a source of endless speculation for a couple hundred years. Do you have any pet theory that you have about them?
I do. And this is a pet theory.
Yeah.
I tend to be a hyper diffusionist. A person who believes that there was a lot more contact among the continents before Columbus than what is in the historical record or the archaeological record. And you got to be careful with this because there's so many people trying to infiltrate that field who have a political agenda for today and that really want to find that, 10,000 years ago, white people were here. Well, 10,000 years ago, it's questionable whether anybody was white, but that's a side story. But, I think that they may have been Neanderthals, that there may have been I wouldn't even say lost race, because they weren't lost. They're lost to us because we don't know much of anything that happened before writing in the Middle East a few thousand years ago. Doing archaeology, I had the opportunity when I was quite young to go to an archaeological dig site and participate in it at one of the local colleges. And what you're finding it's like doing crime scene forensics on something that happened centuries ago.
Yeah.
You're not getting an accurate picture, but that's the science that's accepted. At a lower level of acceptance, you have the folklore of the people who were living there, but people moved around a lot over thousands of years. And the people living there when the English arrived or the French may not have been the people living there 1,000 years earlier.
Yeah, they often told them that they were not the same people.
Yes, in fact, yes. That's, yeah. And it's a pretty open secret. And so you have folklore. And then way back before that, it's just so much, often it's a blank. It's a lot of guesswork. It's a lot of gray area. And I think that there could have been an existing population of Neanderthals a lot later than anybody thinks. And that, that might be an explanation. The weird stories in the folklore of white-haired giants, of the giants, and of them being a different type of person, to me kind of describes Neanderthals, though we don't know. And we don't even, it's all very, very unformed at this point, if it's ever going to be resolved. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of stuff is probably, at least for the foreseeable future, lost to the ages. There's a lot of prehistory, and but as far as, if I had to guess, I would say Neanderthals lived a lot longer in North America than anybody thinks they did. And just let me add one little thing, because I found it to be important. Something as simple as where did the horse come from is hugely contested and debated in legitimate academia. The conventional narrative is that while the horse evolved partially in North America, the Native Americans didn't have horses until they stole them from the Spanish.
Right.
But there's been a number of Native American academics who have rebutted that and who have, produced scholarly works that show, no, we always had horses. We had horses. We've always had horses. Okay. We had horses way before the Europeans arrived. Our society depended on horses. And so much of that which is not, it's not a million years ago. It's a few hundred years ago. But a lot of that is lost to history. It's very much an open question. Mm-hmm. And that was something that blew me away when I was looking up some of this stuff for one of the podcasts.
Yeah, what I've always heard about that with the horses is that horses were in North America, but when the megafauna died out, they died out then. But it could be possible that they could have survived, and it's just one long continuing. I guess there would be a way to do DNA studies on horses that we might be able to find out conclusively. I mean, probably most horses are European in origin, or Eurasian rather.
The ones that are here now, yes.
Yeah, but there might be some other more, Native American horses that are mixed in, possibly. That's interesting. I never thought about that before.
until I read this professor's piece on it while I was looking up. I think it was while I was looking up something. It escapes me, but anyway, something unrelated, and this popped up. And like, here's her PhD thesis on why horses were pre-Columbian in the Americas. And I was like, pow, okay. And it's supported by this and this and this. Okay. That's a new one. And this stuff is always kind of opening and linking to other things, which is, I love that. You get really into studying one thing and you end up, it branches out and branches out and branches out, which is, it's great. It's just a matter of having the time and organization to do the kind of research that you want to do,
Tell me about it, man. Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is really about archaeology being such a young discipline, and they have really had to overcorrect so much for kind of the amateur armchair sport of the leisure class that it was when it was, antiquarianism. And so I feel like there's room for both research and fascination with these mysteries that even verges on, spirit quest for the lost civilization and things like that. But, at some level, it's like you just can't expect the archaeological establishment to follow you on your own spirit quest, though. It's kind of like a separate thing,
Yes, I fully agree there. Yeah.
But a lot of archaeologists are just so unsympathetic to people who are really like looking for these big questions and the biggest questions, our origin and where civilization comes from and all and spiritual things. I think a lot of the archaeological establishment is kind of like poo-pooing to those things, which I think are very important also.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a real hard bias in academia, and it's against big discoveries. It's for small incremental discoveries,
right,
that don't really matter that much. There is nothing like Graham Hancock. There's nothing he could say that the establishment would find acceptable.
Right.
It doesn't matter what he found, how he backed it up. It doesn't. That's not going to get the next grant. Right. That's not going to get the department chair.
But it moves hearts.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And imaginations.
Absolutely. His work is priceless. Yes. There's something also that I think is true that Soraya comments on a lot, that when archaeology was young, it was fighting against religion was very powerful. Mainstream Christian religion was very powerful. And they didn't want to find anything that would confirm the Bible, even if it didn't really confirm the Bible, but they didn't want to find floods. They didn't want to find giants. They didn't want to find anything that sounds like you might be confirming the Bible. And so the opposite view was taken, and a lot of that stuff was edited out. And that doesn't neither undercut nor endorse the Bible, but it's just these bones are still here, and this stuff looks like it was caused by a flood. And you can have a flood and not, become an Episcopalian. It doesn't, it's not one of those.
Well,
it's,
I think, I listened to your Tower of Babel episode, and just the idea that, I think the flood was many different catastrophes. It was a memory that was had of many different catastrophes, and one of which probably would have been what destroyed whatever was around the time of the Younger Dryas. So I think that there is I guess, would you call it an archetypal memory or a genetic memory of this type
I think it's a real thing
of a major catastrophe, which we're finding out more and more because of Randall Carlson and some other people. We're finding out more and more that more than likely there was some kind of cataclysm in the very ancient past. But I think it's also a memory of other things that happened. The Black Sea, the Minoan civilization. It all just kind of, once it was put into the Bible, it was all jumbled up together into the flood story.
That's the way that myth works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The flood was based off of the Epic of Gilgamesh originally, or what was described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So